Hydraulic fracturing, aka fracking. What is it? Is it dangerous? What are the pros? What are the cons? Who are the cons? Let's find out. Welcome to Swing Voter Central.
Fracking? She's been against it for 12 years.
I made that very clear in 2020. I will not ban fracking. There's no question I'm in favor of banning fracking. I've made very clear my position on fracking.
On the issue of fracking, we know one thing. Donald Trump is pro-fracking, and Joe Biden is pro-fracking, and Kamala Harris is pro-fracking. But she's also anti-fracking, and she is pro-fracking, but she is anti-fracking, and she is a pro-fracking, anti-fracking activist, and don't you dare ever say otherwise. Now that we got that off the table, let's examine fracking. As of right now, it is safe to say that all politicians are pro-fracking for the moment. But why? Why have Democrats flipped on this very controversial topic? How did we all end up on the same page? The short answer is money. The health of the American economy is critical to the health of economies around the world. When we suffer, our allies suffer. When America's doing great, everybody benefits. Now, I've talked quite a lot on this show about the shale boom. It was a discovery that was made in the mid-2000s where we discovered that underneath of our little American toes was more oil and natural gas than Saudi Arabia and Russia is capable of producing combined. And all we had to do to get to it was fracking. This was a liquid gold opportunity for us to have energy independence from our adversaries for the next century. It was a really big discovery, but it was very controversial. Why? Well, first we have to understand fracking. A new invention that would allow us to drill horizontally thousands of feet into layers of shale rock. Then we blast the rock with 3 to 5 million gallons of water and chemicals and sand to form cracks in the earth that release the oil and the gas that has been trapped for millions of years. Pretty cool if you ask me, but it does come with risks and challenges. Number one, we have no place to put those millions of gallons of contaminated chemical water once the fracking operation is complete. Number two, if something goes wrong in a fracking operation, the consequences are concerning. In a botched fracking operation, more often than not, the drinking water of nearby residents is contaminated by methane gas that has leaked from nearby fracking wells. And while all this is amazing news for people who love to do pyrotechnics and magic tricks, this is terrible news for people who like to drink water.
I can often hold a standard kitchen match to my water, and like I said, it is unpredictable, but the methane randomly travels with the water. Just like that.
Whoa.
So if fracking is so dangerous, why then do both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump support fracking? The answer, as I said in the beginning, is money. It is true that Kamala Harris was once anti-fracking a long time ago, a very long time ago, in 2020 when she was running for vice president. But the thing about fossil fuels is that they're actually worth a lot of cash. And America loves money. America needs money in order to stay on top. Our inconceivable wealth is one of the reasons we are the most powerful nation on earth. Even China, with 1.4 billion people, is still earning $10 trillion less than the United States and our 333 million people. And when you compare our economy to the economies of other world superpowers, you realize that economically, their reserve looks like a child's piggy bank compared to what we're packing in the United States Treasury. And to be able to harvest the sheer amount of gas and oil that we've discovered in our shale and under our soil, that would put us so far ahead of the rest of the world financially that they could never catch up. We would leave them all in the dust, which again is a good thing for our allies and a bad thing for our enemies. So when America started facing inflation after COVID, we decided to tap into that little bubbling reserve of liquid gold beneath our feet and our neighborhoods and our farmlands. And we started to drill. When Kamala Harris brags about being the deciding vote on the Inflation Reduction Act as a defense for her pro-fracking platform,
I have not banned fracking as Vice President of the United States, and in fact, I was the tie-breaking vote on the Inflation Reduction Act, which opened new leases for fracking.
she's talking about a quick and dirty solution that our government keeps in its back pocket for whenever we need some fast cash, and that's fracking. In order to fix the economy, we needed to get cash flowing again, and in order to do that, both sides of the aisle agreed that we needed to get oil and gas flowing again, especially because it's an election year. And every time we have an election, American eyes are up on those gas pumps. Americans are spoiled when it comes to gas prices. Anytime gas goes above $3.50 a gallon, everyone loses their freaking minds. Meanwhile, in countries like Denmark, they're paying $8 a gallon. And it's always been like that during the 2008 financial crisis. And in the years following, Europe was paying upwards of $11 to $13 a gallon. That would have Americans rioting in the streets. Keeping the cost of gas low is part of what allows us to afford, for example, the American dream of having a big house and owning a giant car. These are all things that require cheap gas. And although Europeans would disagree with our wasteful lifestyle, it is what it is. It's an election issue. I've got to talk about it. So the reason our gas is so cheap is because the United States has always prioritized dominance in the oil industry. Oil is traded on the dollar. That gives us some control on oil pricing. And of course, anytime war breaks out, oil sales skyrocket. And that is because war is a well-oiled machine. No pun intended. And this war in Ukraine has been named by Joe Biden time and time again as a reason for us ramping up our drilling efforts. But no one is telling you that the reason mostly is money. Because we're making money off of this war, especially in the realm of oil sale and oil production. Interesting. And now I'm no conspiracy theorist, but I do find it interesting that within a decade of America discovering all of that oil beneath our land, and then in 2015 lifting our ban on oil exports, within just a few short years of that, every single country that was teetering on the edge of war suddenly went to war, all at the same time. And then the Nord Stream pipeline blew up, and guess who became a key supplier of oil to the European Union? It was us. What's up? Oh my God. Are we a villain? Are we a villain, America? Are we the villain? Major American energy companies like ExxonMobil, Chevron, and ConocoPhillips benefit when the world needs more oil or when oil from other parts of the world is limited. During the Iraq War, for example, these companies saw significant profit gains. The more the Middle East destabilized, the richer they got. Is that even a conspiracy? It's just a fact. So that means no matter who wins the election, we can expect to hear a lot more drilling. I'm from Pennsylvania. I actually know what fracking sounds like. I'll never forget the first time I heard it. Our whole house was vibrating. It was like some kind of low humming sound, and I ran out of my room and I woke my dad up, who was taking a nap on the couch, and I was like, "Dad, do you hear that?" And he was so freaked out. He got up from the couch and just stood in our kitchen just listening to and our whole house was vibrating. And it was because they were fracking nearby. They were drilling a fracking well. Isn't that fun? Anyway, when you compare the plans of Trump and Harris, there do seem to be a lot of these quick and dirty strategies on the Republican agenda, while Harris's plan for the economy is more long-term, more sustainable, but something where we wouldn't see the effects for another 10 years. And the economy is suffering now. And although, yes, the GDP has somewhat recovered, and although we are seeing things cool down and go back to normal, Americans aren't seeing a difference in their grocery bill or in their energy bill.
There is a big split right now between the metrics of the economy and the reality as it's being felt by Americans. You have some outward signs that say that things should be pretty good, and yet they're not for so many Americans.
How do you feel about the economy?
Americans feel pretty down about the economy. And specifically, they feel quite down about President Biden's handling of the economy.
almost half of Americans feel like their lives have gotten worse economically since the start of the Biden administration.
Most economists agree that right now what we really need is a quick boost, a quick economic boost to put the country back on its feet, followed by more sustainable, more long-term plans, which is why a lot of people are voting Republican this election, because they know that the economy may just need some quick and dirty solutions so that people can afford to eat again, and then we can focus on the long term. That is where I think the two political ideologies diverge. But on fracking, everyone agrees that this is a short-term fix that we are going to pursue. That leaves the question, which president do you trust more to cut the red tape on oil production and fracking? Is it going to be the party that has dedicated their entire political career to supporting the oil industry, or is it going to be the Democratic side who has spent all of their time and effort trying to choke the oil industry? If both sides can agree we need to ramp up oil production in the short term, which side should run that operation? I think in order to figure out the answer, we can look back in time and examine the policy platforms of Donald Trump versus Joe Biden and find out where the experience lies. And also examine green energy efforts, because that is important to a lot of people. This is an overview of the Trump-era energy legislation. Everything in green is green energy focused, and everything in orange is oil and gas focused. As you can see, the list of oil and gas legislation is a lot longer. So he signed an executive order on energy independence, which was basically slicing through the red tape and deregulating oil production in hopes of gaining energy independence from our adversaries, like Iran and Russia. He continued the Keystone XL and Dakota Access pipelines, and we have talked in previous episodes about the Keystone XL pipeline and its function, and it's really just on the Democratic side, it's just used as like a political gesture. In any case, Trump was like, that's a bunch of crap. I'm just going to continue the building, because we all know that it's going to happen. What's the point in slowing it down? Who's that helping? Not the American people, and definitely not our bank accounts.
I think we need to have sensible deregulation where we keep the regulations that matter. Like we don't want to destroy, important habitats or,
Yes.
Encourage oil spills or anything like that. But there are so many regulatory agencies that have overlapping responsibility that we are smothering progress. And we can't build a high-speed rail in America. You look at the ridiculous high-speed rail project in California, where they've spent $7 billion, and all they've got to show for it is a 1,600-foot section of concrete with no rails on it.
He repealed the methane rule, which is not great. The Trump administration rolled back an Obama-era rule that restricted methane emissions from oil and gas production on federal lands. They would argue on the Republican side that this just slowed down production and didn't really help the environment. It just slowed down an oil well's ability to impact the environment. He opened the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge for oil drilling. So basically he allowed drilling on protected lands for wildlife. He reversed offshore drilling restrictions. Now this is something that I would support, because if we're gonna drill, we might as well drill. What's the point? Next, he loosened the environmental impact requirements. Next, he rolled back fuel efficiency standards. The administration rolled back Obama-era fuel efficiency standards for vehicles, which were intended to reduce emissions and decrease reliance on oil. Finally, the administration streamlined permitting for oil and gas exploration on public land and encouraged new leasing, including efforts to increase oil and gas production in the Gulf of Mexico. So this is something that we would need to happen in any case over the next 4 years. If everyone is in agreement that we need to ramp up oil production, well, the only way to do it is to cut that red tape, which is exactly what this specific action did. In the way of green energy, there's really not much here on the Trump agenda. There's investment tax credit. The investment tax credit, this was extended for solar and wind projects, providing support to renewable energy development. So anything in the way of green energy, this provided tax credits for those people. He extended the production tax credit, which was beneficial for wind energy projects. And he produced the Energy Act of 2020, which included provisions supporting research and development for renewable energy technologies, energy storage, carbon capture, and nuclear power. This is the Biden era energy legislation platform, and this is a very busy looking schedule. So it looks like, in addition to supporting the oil and gas industry, Joe Biden was very heavily focused on developing green energy technology. I think this is a very nicely balanced agenda. You'll notice that a lot of the pro-oil agenda that was put forth by the Biden administration it sounds like it's a response to inflation. So again, we're kind of feeding into that strategy that our government has identified of using oil to balance the economic hit that we took from supply chain shortage and other things like that have caused inflation. It just seems like, despite all of these efforts that were made by the Biden administration, there has been no substantial impact. A lot of people are of the impression that we should be handing the ball to the other team now because the Democrats had their chance. And if you take a look at Joe Biden's record, he did pass quite a big chunk of legislation. And where did we get with it? We are now producing more barrels of oil currently under the Biden administration than any other country on earth. There is something to be said about that. But why then is the economy not recovering the way that it could if we were to actually cut that red tape and actually ramp up oil production? I don't really know. And the thing we also have to ask ourselves is why? Why are we suddenly in a situation where we need to bail ourselves out to the point where even the Democrats are looking at oil to save the economy? How did we end up here? Well, a lot of people would argue that it was the Biden administration's poor handling of the COVID economy that led us here in the first place. The American Rescue Plan, which gave stimulus checks to people who did not need stimulus checks. It was a terrible handling. They argue that the reason that everybody got a stimulus check, even people that didn't need it, is because it allowed the Biden administration to more quickly produce these checks and to provide them to the people. But in the long term, it ended up making everyone's lives worse. It made groceries more expensive. It made energy more expensive. It overstimulated the economy when the supply chain was facing a shortage. So it's like, okay, Democrats, you guys kind of really screwed up here. You kind of really messed up the economy. And now you're like, oh yeah, let's get some Republican ideas on our plate so we can get some oil and fix this big mess that we made. And I'm asking myself, why would we allow you to do that in the first place? As a swing voter, I'm like, why the heck would we go, okay, who's going to fix this big mess that the Biden administration created? The mess at our border, the mess we're facing with grocery prices and energy costs. Aren't Democrats mad? Aren't you mad that we ended up here? Aren't you questioning Kamala Harris suddenly supporting fracking? There's no bone in your body or cell in your brain that's like, why all of a sudden? It's because we've made a mess. The Democrats have made a total mess out of the American economy. The whole world is suffering for it. And you want to give them another 4 years? I don't know. There are a lot of reasons to hate both sides of the aisle right now, but I feel like everyone should be way more miffed at the Democrats. That's just me. I still haven't decided. I'm still undecided. It feels like a Republican era to me, but I don't think that's what we're going to get. It looks like the world is really rallying for Kamala. And that's fascinating. The first woman president, how exciting. I'll be happy, I guess, for her if she wins. But at the same time, you're going to get what you voted for, America. You're going to get exactly what you voted for. Know what you're voting for. That's why we're here. Thanks for watching Swing Voter Central.